I'm Armine Ishkanian, and I'm an associate professor in social policy. Currently, I'm on a 3-year secondment to the LSE's International Inequalities Institute, where I serve as the executive director of the Atlantic Fellows for Social and Economic Equity program. My research focuses on civil society and its relationship to the policy process and to social transformation. And over the years, I've done research in a number of countries, including Armenia, Greece, Egypt, England, and Russia. And I've studied how social movements, NGOs, and other civil society organizations, including grassroots groups and civic initiatives, challenge government policies which they see as driving forward inequalities. They bring forth alternatives and seek to influence and achieve change in the policy process at different stages, including at the stage of policy design, implementation, and later in terms of evaluation, which looks at how those policies are impacting people's lives. Right now, we are seeing social movements taking an active role across the globe in terms of addressing inequalities and injustices, from Black Lives Matter to Extinction Rebellion, and in previous years, Occupy and Indignados were challenging government policies, but also the policies of intergovernmental organizations such as the World Bank and the IMF to talk about and to realize how their policies were driving forward inequalities. So my work looks at how social movements and other civil society actors are engaged in the policy process and trying to effect change to create more equitable policies and circumstances for the communities that they represent and they live and work in. And this work is trying to also bring together on a more theoretical level the research in social policy with the multidisciplinary field of research of social movement studies. This is where I'm working right now in terms of trying to build theory and to strengthen our conceptual understandings of how social movements are engaging and influencing social policy. I see this as opening up a new research horizon for social policy as a discipline. And I'm also doing this through my co-convenership of the Politics of Inequality research theme, which is based at the International Inequalities Institute. We launched this theme in October of 2020, and it will run for 3 years, and the aim is to bring together scholarship from an international, comparative, and intersectional perspective to understand how social movements and other civil society actors are challenging inequalities across the globe. What inspired me to do research on civil society and social movements was when I was becoming an academic going through the PhD process. That was shortly after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And it was very interesting to me to see how societies transform. Since the late 1990s, I've been working in this field. And in the 2010s, when we began to see the emergence of the Arab Spring and Occupy movements across the globe, among other movements, I became interested even more to see how civil society actors, how working at the grassroots and through more structured organizational forms are trying to engage in social transformation and policy impact. And that's where my work began to go into that direction for the past decade and a half. And in particularly, what I'm really interested in is understanding not just how formal organizations such as charities or non-governmental organizations are engaged in the policy process, but I'm very interested in how grassroots groups, protest groups, and social movements are engaging in the policy process and how we bring together their contentious politics and forms of collective action together with the policy process. And in recent years, particularly in my work in Armenia, because that's where I've done the greatest amount of research throughout my career, I've built strong relationships with civil society actors. I've shared my work. More recently, I have sought to co-produce work with them so as to develop their research capabilities. And I've done a lot of mentoring of early career researchers in Armenia. And this is part of my commitment to decolonizing the curriculum and to decolonizing knowledge production, because I believe it's very important to bring voices of those who are not working at mainstream Western institutions and to share our work with them, but also not just to share the work, but to help them produce the work that informs our thinking going forward. So this has been part of my research and my commitment to knowledge production, and I see it as a very important part of my knowledge exchange and impact. Furthermore, in my capacity as the Executive Director of the Atlantic Fellows for Social and Economic Equity Program at the LSE's International Inequalities Institute, I bring forward my research to inform the teaching that I do. I view civil society as a space where there are organizations that come together to work towards shared interests and collective goals. Civil society may include formal organizations such as charities and non-governmental organizations, volunteer organizations, faith-based organizations, but civil society is also a space where we have trade unions, protest groups, grassroots groups, and in social policy, we speak about this as the mixed economy of welfare, thinking around how civil society organizations such as faith-based groups, such as charities and voluntary organizations support the government through different forms of service delivery, but also mutual aid and solidarity in supporting and delivering welfare and supporting communities. The research users who would benefit the most from my research are civil society practitioners, social movement activists, and as well as donors from bilateral and multilateral organizations, as well as philanthropic foundations. Moreover, I think government agencies that also work with civil society would benefit from my research because it gives them insights into how civil society organizations implement programs, but also how civil society voices are important in shaping the programs that should be implemented if we want to have more equitable and just policies and programs.